Hello, hello. Let me turn the jam off, even though it's a jam. Remember that dance? I think it's called the Jordache. It's like, I can't even get the beat down here. I'm losing my mind over here. Holy smokes. What's going on, guys? All right, let's see. Here we go. Hey, how's everybody doing? So this book, right? This book right here. Holy shite. People are losing their minds over this book right now. Okay. Apparently, Howard Blum has had some like threats made against him, and so have the publishers of this book. Oh gosh, what's the name of it? Harper Collins, right? I guess people are so pressed over this book, and it just makes me laugh, honestly, because most of the people that are shitting all over this book haven't actually read the book, So how about read the book before you shit all over it, or don't shit on it? I mean, it's not that hard, right? I don't understand. So I guess they do sort of understand. I think one of the reasons why people hate the book is because Howard Blum is making money off the book. And that makes people angry, apparently. They forgot that we lived in a capitalist society somehow and didn't realize that that's how people, earn living in our country. When they produce something, they get money for it, right? The other reason people are real upset is because they feel like it paints Bryan Kohberger in a bad light. Because at the very end of the book, I was waiting for it actually, because I was almost going to say, hey, look, the guy never, ever accuses Kohberger as being the killer. But at the very end, he does kind of go into a chapter and he states what he personally thinks happened. But he's sure to say that it's his personal opinion and he could be wrong. I don't understand what the problem with that is. I've heard people who are really for free speech on this platform losing their minds, namely JB Gunner. And I don't really watch him that much, but he is kind of interesting to follow on occasion. The man was losing his mind over this, okay? Losing his mind. And I'm like, that's so weird, JB Gunner, because you're the man who's like, your language isn't very good and you tell people to kiss it if they don't like it and it's free speech, right? So why are you upset that this guy right here wrote a book and is making money off of it? The things that he feels are true, he tells you, and the things he doesn't know, he tells you. And again, even when he describes the scene where the killer kills them, and I can read that scene. I'll read it for you. But even when he describes it, he's not saying it's Bryan Kohberger. He just calls it the killer, right? So I don't know, guys. I mean, it's a freaking book. It's not really anything more than that. And, I get it. He made it before the trial even came out. But people made tons of money off this case already. Here on YouTube, people make money off of it. So I just don't understand. I'm not making any money. I don't monetize my channel because I want to be able to say what I want. But regardless, that's our society, and I think it's kind of amusing, not laughing at anyone, but the situation, and also very interesting that people are so pressed about this book. Okay. So anyway, let's get to it. One of the things I did a first chapter or first part review. I told you how it's kind of interesting the way that he sets the book up, because he does it as Michael's story, which is the father's story, then the children's story, obviously the kids, the hunter story, and the hunter, big shocker here, is Brett Payne. And if you never saw that article of him next to this giant wolf that he had been tracking for quite some time. Let me show you a picture of it because it is in the photo here for that chapter. Oh no, he didn't even put that picture in here. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to find that picture in case you guys haven't seen it. But basically Brett Payne, when he was younger, before he was, on the police force, he went and basically tracked and trailed and preyed upon this great gray wolf or something, and ultimately ended up killing it. So he kind of draws, parallels between finding the wolf and killing it and then finding the killer in here. He does that kind of thing. I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's okay. He's not a bad writer, but it's, it's not like the best book or anything. I mean, you could read this book in a day, honestly. I only stopped because I got bored towards the end. All right. So anyway, this was one of the things I found interesting in the book. And there's a lot of interesting little tidbits if you go through the book. And, I'm just going to go over a few of the ones that I highlighted here. So in the very beginning, after the murder happened, a trio of officers had shown up on September 1st, 2022, less than 2 weeks after Bryan, sporting his new swim trunks, had attended the pool party. Like the bash at the Grove, it was another celebration at the start of the new semester. And then he goes into the whole situation where, the police showed up basically for, to tell them to pipe it down. It's too loud. And then, they got the whole runaround from the two kids that answer the door, the two young men that answer the door, remember? And then they call Maddie, and then, they say, you gotta get these people out of your house and yada, yada, right? Well, apparently, according to some source that Blum talked to, the police were poring over this video, looking for connections between it and the murder. Okay. And it's just really strange because we were all doing that too, right? We were all looking at that video. I think I first saw it on Lana's channel. She's like always got the FOIAs out there before everyone else. I think she's great. And she gets it before the news half the time, but that's where I saw it. And I remember going over and over and over that thing. That's all we had at that time. Remember back in the day when all we had was like the footage from them, the police going, and man, did we like get into that, right? We really went hard into that. And there was another one where they showed up during the day, which was like a totally bogus situation where they walked up and they gave them a hard time about something to do with, the speakers being loud, and they yelled at one group, so they got to go yell at these kids, which was just really bizarre. And I think we can all agree that whole setup was really bizarre. That's the one where the police officer takes a picture of Kaylee's ID. People were put off by that. I was put off by that. I still don't know if that's an official thing that police do or not. If that was his official police phone or what that deal is. The other thing was, the guy that was kind of he looked like he was casing out the joint. I mean, he's like walking around, he's like looking around, and then he's like, that's interesting. The steps don't go up. Like, bro, what are you doing? Are you going to come back later and like steal the speakers or something? That was just really odd, right? That whole thing was super odd, but whatever. Apparently the police were also looking at these videos over and over to see if there was something they could glean from it. I thought that was really wild. What were they doing? I mean, we were doing the same thing, but I don't know if we found anything. Did they find anything? Thought it was interesting. So moving on, he gets into the children. He calls them the children. I think a lot of us who are older kind of think of them as kids because we either have kids their age or nephews or nieces that age. And they really are kind of in that in-between kid and adult phase, when they're in college like that. But he talks about that. And, one of the things that I also found really interesting here was this. Let me find it. Oh, please let me find it if I didn't lose it already. He basically gets into this whole thing about the video. Let's talk about the video, guys. You know which video I'm talking about now, right? The Linda Lane video, guys. So I don't know if you know the whole saga of the Linda Lane video. I don't know if you followed the trauma about the Linda Lane video. I followed it enough to kind of get an idea of what was happening. I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. I'm going to read this and then I'm going to tell you what I think. Sydney Norton, as Brat Norton, on TikTok and YouTube, had succeeded without leaving her home in North Carolina in landing a series of scoops. Access to family members of the victims and impressively probing interviews with authorities involved in this case. A glamorous 32-year-old, she also had star power. She was getting a lot of attention. As a consequence, perhaps it was inevitable that one of her envious internet competitors decided to take her down a peg. Before I go on, I just want to say this. I never heard of this woman, and I was following this case from day one, like many of you. I mean, I was watching everything. Now, to be fair, I don't really go on TikTok because I just feel like why make it easier for the Chinese to track everything I do? I just feel like it's not a good plan right now. I mean, our own government is already following everything I do. I don't need another government like China to know everything about my life. So I really don't, I don't fuck with TikTok, but either way, never heard of this woman. Okay. I remember when the Linda Lane footage first came out, the first time I saw it was on Veritas Secretas. I'm probably saying that wrong, the Latin phrase. And, it came out like piecemeal, right? And everyone's like, what the F is this? Like, what is going on over here? And everybody was really focused on the car situation, But after a while, with a gag order, the way it is, people started really digging in deeper. I was always, I'm going to tell you from the jump, always only interested in the audio of that because I heard stuff on the audio right away that I was like, this is crazy. And then, of course, I did my Linda Lane series and, people want to say what they want to say about it. I don't give a shit. Honestly, I just don't. I heard what I heard. I wrote it down. I put it out there for public consumption because I felt compelled to. I already talked about this. Whether it's true or not, whether that was, people play acting or not. I've had people try to tell me it was a television on. No, bro, not a television. I heard people say the name Kaylee and Maddie. So unless it just happened to be a coincidence that they were saying those names, don't think so. Regardless, I'm still not saying that I think that's what happened. I'm just saying that's what I heard. And for some people, that's enough of a trigger, apparently. Anyway, moving on. Let's get back to this, okay? Because I always wanted to know who leaked this this video. Because as far as I knew, we know Kane Francetic, right? Kane Francetic owns that property, right? He owns the property. I've done a video where I show you the let's see if I can find it here. I show you the video of what it looks like. I may have taken this off though. I don't know if I still have it. Yeah, I don't have it up here, guys. But I do have a specific video just about the Linda Lane camera systems. And there's one on the very top, the roof, that looks like it has an extra mic. People have also sort of poo-pooed that too. I don't really care. To me, it looks like a mic. Okay. And just the fact that he has this large mic next to a camera, kind of strange to begin with. Like, what are you trying to record? I don't understand. The camera's good and they generally have their own, they have their own audio, right? So I don't know. Regardless, when that came out piecemeal, I just assumed it was Kane Francetic's copy. He apparently turned it over to the police. I've heard different stories, like from, midnight the night before till 2 p.m. the next day. I've heard longer versions that he handed over. But either way, we know Kane Francetic turned over some footage from the Linda Lane. He claimed in one video it was from the rooftop camera, which I think is from the very top one that faces Taylor Ave, that when we see the car go by. But there are all kinds of other cameras around there. That's not the only camera. And so it was just kind of a mystery, right? Like, who turned this over? It's not going to be that man Kane. He's friends with the president of the university. He doesn't want to, I don't think, wants to cause any drama. But there's all kinds of theories that you can go into with that too, because Kane has a son, Sage, and Sage runs a realty company. And, he's friends with the guy who runs 1122 King Road. I mean, it's just, it's just every rabbit hole available that you can go into. And I've gone down them. And while there may be a connection, I just can't make one. Okay. Regardless, Norton received an incredible video. It had been recorded by a King Road neighbor. And it revealed the real story of what had happened that night. The neighbor, in fact, had witnessed the events from a distance. The tape, however, just laid the groundwork for the next part of the exclusive. There was an overwrought barrage of late-night calls to Norton, each an emotionally charged plea, each filled with a rising level of hysteria. the caller wailing that her secret tape and her secret knowledge had made her a target. Square us. Let me do, whoops. Sorry. Oh, yes, I just want to jam out a little bit. All right, that's enough of a break. I get distracted too easily. Sorry, guys. All right, so anyway, it made her a, quote, target. Oh, wait, another one. I'm not safe, she pleaded to Norton. Help me. Norton, caught up in the drama, convinced that her source's fear was genuine and that she was sitting on a colossal scoop, reached out to the FBI and to the authorities in Idaho. In the process, the case became no longer an abstraction or a distant news story. Its terror was now her terror. Norton grew to believe that her access to this secret knowledge had put her own life, as well as that of her young son, in jeopardy. Dangerous events were closing in on her. But in time, the video, while artful in its recreation, even ingenious, was revealed as a clever fake. Maybe that's why they never said anything about the Linda Lane video. Because, I mean, it would technically be a leak after there was a gag order in the case, right? I would think, you know. So, but here's the best part. Here's what Howard Blum says the goal was, the reason why this whole video was faked, right? Which, if you've seen Linda Lane, I mean, there's a lot going on in there. I mean, people have broken down the reflections off of it. I mean, people have gone hard and deep on this Linda Lane. Myself, hours listening to the audio, which honestly sounds really, some of the things you hear are horrible. But apparently it's an ingenious and clever fake. And we finally have the reason why it was done, guys. You ready for this? The hoaxer's vindictive plan. Once Norton had gone public with her scoop, the embarrassing reality would be revealed and Norton would be discredited. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I don't think Brett Norton is that important. I'm sorry. I just don't. I mean, it's not like she's one of these creators on YouTube that has 3 million followers. It's not like she's Annie Elise, right? Like, I could see, I mean, I think Annie Elise is great. I love watching her. But my point being is that, like, most of us didn't even know who this chick was, okay? Until she came over to our turf on YouTube and started to get into, like, little shuffles and scats with, like, I think Rory she got into it with. She got into it with another woman. I forget her name, but she did like a whole expose on her and what a horrible person she allegedly is. I don't know the woman. I'm not making a judgment. I'm just saying, I just find it hard to believe that somebody made a Linda Lane hoax video to discredit Brett Norton when most of us didn't even know who she was. And even now, people may not know who she is. Also, she was not the only one to receive the video. As you recall, I believe Lana Oriani received the video. I believe Sleuthy Goosey received the video. She was concerned that it was something maybe important and she was worried, but she didn't release it. And then who was the other one that received it? Oh, I think maybe Justin released it. I don't know. He always says he has a scoop, and I can't follow him. You guys follow that guy, Justin? I mean, he comes off like he's got this big scoop and he knows all the stuff, and then he gets really irritated at everyone for not listening to him. But none of it makes sense. He just drops like a quote Easter egg. He thinks it's like a bombshell. Like, I'm related to, what do you say he's related to now? He said he did his DNA. I asked him for proof. Like, do you have the DNA thing that shows you're related to Hannah Cleary? I never saw it. Did any of you guys ever see it? Remember that whole sidetrack narrative about Hannah Cleary, who had, basically taken her own life, and it was because she was bullied by Maddie, apparently, and Kaylee or something. I mean, that was a whole thing. That was a whole narrative, which I'll be honest, I never really bought into. But Justin went in hard for that. And if he listens to this video, he'll probably get really mad at me. But I'm not downing him. I'm just saying, like, bro, like if you got something good, like just spell it out easily, because I can't figure it out, and I've tried. I don't know what you're talking about half the time. So anyway, so yeah, so apparently, according to Howard Blum, it's Bratton Norton's credibility that was at stake with that video, and that's why it was made. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. Okay, moving on. Oh my gosh. I mean, I must really want to jam, right? Like, let's check it out. All right, here, hold on. Let me get back here. This is the next thing I wanted to talk about here. We can just listen to some jams in the meantime. Well, the good news is, what he does in the book, what Howard Blum does in the book is, he goes through the defense's story and he spells out all the problems with the case, And so anybody who's upset with Howard Blum's, the fact that the man wrote a book and thinks Bryan is guilty, the book actually does a really nice job. I mean, it kind of highlights all the problems and the holes in the case. Okay. Like, let's see, where is it? Let's see if we can just get it. It was a seemingly desperate strategy, and the authorities paid it little mind. In the second-floor detective's shack of the Moscow Police Department building, the mood, I don't know if I'd call it a shack. Didn't they just get a brand new building built for them by the university? But he's calling it a shack. Okay. The mood for a telling example remained confident. Soddy, S-O-D-D-I, the cops taunted derisively. Some other dude did it. Sure. How many times have we heard that? And how did those cases work out? We got our man, and there's no way he's going to wiggle out of this. And the facts they were enumerated by law enforcement with a prideful confidence seemed to bolster this argument. And he talks about the 51 terabytes of evidence, which he does say the sly bottom line was that it would keep the already inundated defense busy for a while and then some. Exactly. If the defense has 51 terabytes of electronic evidence, like audio, video, recordings, whatever, right? And they're coming out there saying, like, we believe our client is innocent, right? Which, let's just face it, lawyers don't say that unless they actually believe it, because lawyers do represent people who are murderers, and they specifically don't ask them, did you do it? So that they can represent them in such a way that they uphold, their oath to the bar and their integrity. Because if you tell the lawyer, yeah, I did it, they're going to have to tell the authorities, because you can't, now some lawyers may keep that, if they're real shady, they may still keep that to themselves. But overall, if you want to plead innocent, you just let your lawyer fight the facts of the case as being, it's reasonable doubt, and you poke holes, right? But if a lawyer comes out and says, we believe our client is innocent, and not only has Ann said that, so did Elisa Mazoth, which she's the private attorney who did get someone taken off of, I don't know if it was death row, but he was convicted for a murder. So, for some reason, they really believe in his innocence. And I like to think they know a lot more about this than any of us do, including Howard Blum. So regardless, they talk about a perfect match with the genetic swab of Kohberger's cheek. And then the car sighting, which we now know wasn't even his freaking car. Okay. The fact that his phone was pinging there and he obviously turned it off, according to Payne, right? There's no other explanation for the fact that this one, God forbid somebody's phone died, the battery died, and then they had a car that kind of looked like theirs by somebody's house that got murdered. You're screwed, according to Payne, because he's just going to say, well, it's known that most people who commit crimes turn their phone off when they do it. I don't know. I think people nowadays, dumb criminals maybe, but criminals of a little higher level, the type that don't leave any blood at the crime scene, those types, they don't do that lame old, oh, let's turn my phone off. Nah, man. If you're able to do what that person did in that house and not leave a speck of blood, you definitely are not going to be the criminal that turns your phone off. Well, it just doesn't make any sense. I'm sure. I just feel positive that you would have done something differently. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, guys. Tell me what you think. But regardless, bad facts, though, he says. Bad facts. A phrase defense lawyers like to bandy about. It's a term that's meant to draw an epistemological distinction between what's objectively real and what is subjective opinion. Okay? So, litany of doubts had slowly taken a foreboding shape. Consider, and here we go. DNA on the knife sheath snap, it's touch DNA. That is, it's derived from a fingerprint rather than a drop of blood. And that's pretty shaky evidence. The courtroom reality was that in case after case, touch DNA had been tarnished by a motley collection of false positive results. A smart defense attorney might argue that there was just as much likelihood of touch DNA being accurate as a juror's winning the lottery. Who'd want to condemn someone to execution based on those odds? 100% exactly. Don't even get me started on their DNA. I'm not going to talk about it other than what he just said because I believe it. The car video, there was no image of the driver in any of them. And there was not a single shot displayed a license plate. None. And that meant that there was nothing that definitively put Kohberger at the wheel or demonstrated beyond a reasonable doubt that it was even his car. After all, there was a lot of Hyundai Elantras on the road beside his, and adding to the muddle, it had taken the FBI 3 tries before they'd settled on a vehicle year for the car. There had been a string of miscalculations, and a jury might not be very forgiving. Cell tower triangulations? Peel away the well-documented limitations of the process, and Kohberger's phone could be placed anywhere within a 13-mile radius of the home. And that's about as definitive as a suspicion, not a certainty. Eyewitness identification? Well, a lot of people have bushy eyebrows. I mean, that was like, honestly, that's like the most ridiculous part, really, of the evidence, bushy eyebrows. Can we just all remember? Can we all let's just go back in time. Go back in time when this first came out. The bushy eyebrows, guys. Bushy eyebrows. Like, men need to groom more, I guess, if they don't want to be accused of doing something awful like this. Oh, yeah. So a lot of people with bushy eyebrows. Besides, testimony from a witness who was frozen and in shock, like Dylan had been, bluntly characterized in a police affidavit, would be easy to impugn. Especially by a defense attorney who had bushy eyebrows. I like that. Does that guy Jay, I can't remember his last name, the other defense, does he have bushy eyebrows? The murder weapon, where is it? They never found it, okay? The motive, the timeline narrative the prosecution had been chasing owed as much to clairvoyance as psychology. Speculative psychobabble at best, and such wispy conjecture would never sway a practical thinking Idaho jury. And those are facts, right? So he lays down, he knows all of it, right? For whatever reason, he lays down why he thinks he's guilty later too, but I think it's probably like many of you think it's crap. But it doesn't make me dislike the man. I'm not like, oh, I just want to yell at him and let me just tell him how despicable he is. Like, it doesn't bother me. He has a right to write this book, and he has a right to express his opinion. And people are upset. I heard somebody yelling like, how does he know what happened in the grand jury? They're secret. Like jurors talk, okay? And sometimes they want to tell people, you know what I mean? They're not supposed to, but if they know they can trust you, they're going to tell you some shit. And that's what happened here. He's not the first person to have heard from a secret grand jury and written about it. This is what real journalists do. They get sources and they have to keep them anonymous. Obviously have to keep them anonymous. People getting mad. Oh, his anonymous sources. That's ridiculous. No, like if this guy wants to have a career and write any other book or any other article for any newspaper, the bottom line is you never give up your source. I'm sorry, but I'm the type of person, I just call it mob rules, okay? Everybody in my household knows this, mob rules. That means you tell me something, I'm not telling anybody else. Even if you don't tell me not to tell someone, I'm not telling anybody else because it's not my story to tell. It's not my story to tell. And some people use this kind of stuff as currency. It's like clout and currency. oh, I heard this. I'm gonna go and talk about it, right? It's no, no, no. And I taught my kids too. That's not your story to tell. Okay. So somebody shares something with you in confidence, especially if it's sensitive, even if it's not, I keep that stuff. I don't share it with anybody. Okay. If somebody wants me to tell it or I want to tell it, I will ask before I do it. And that's pretty rare because I'm not really a gossiper. So, this guy's a journalist. This is the ethics of real journalism. You never hand over your sources. Okay. This is why, let's think about it. This is why Julian Assange, all right. Have you seen that poor bastard lately? I guess he's now been extradited to the Mariana Islands. Don't ask me why he's out in the middle of the ocean having his final justice or say. Hopefully they don't whack him like they whacked, oh my gosh, who's my favorite guy? He's my favorite guy, McAfee. Oh gosh, I love that guy. But hopefully they don't whack him like that because I can't believe the man's still alive, okay? But Julian Assange would not give up his sources. And so he got stuck in, I think, Spain or some other foreign country for how many years? I mean, we're talking about since the 2016 election. That's how mad they were at him for blowing up Hillary Clinton's emails and stuff. All right. So Julian Assange didn't give his sources up. And that's like major. Like he's been imprisoned and like on his deathbed almost. Thankfully, he's been extradited to Mariana Islands. Let's see what happens. But Howard Blum is not giving up this source. I mean, why should he? He shouldn't. And I don't want him to. I don't need to know who the source was to believe that you probably heard this from somebody. It's not that implausible to believe that a friend or a coworker or someone that these people have confided in talked to a journalist. They're not going to talk to me if I call them up. Who are you? Post Woke World on YouTube. You've been there for like less than a year. They're not going to talk to me, but they're going to talk to Howard Blum. He used to work for the New York Times. He's written several other books. He's a quote credible person to confide in. And they know that if he blows their secret up, he'll never get in. He'll never be trusted again. So yeah, the guy's got freaking sources. I don't find it that impossible. I don't know why people find that so hard to believe and then want to shit on the guy for not telling his sources. But apparently a couple of the grand jury members spoke with Howard Blum. And also, more importantly, and this was something I remember doing a little video about a while back, but I think it's important to revisit it. And let me just find it. And it has to do with Steve Gonzalez. And, Steve was just like a lot of us in the beginning, I mean, he was contacting different creators. I wasn't doing videos when he was doing that. And honestly, I'm glad because I wouldn't want to get involved with a family member on this case. It's too close to them. And I don't trust that I'm a good person and I would do my best, but that's so hard what they went through. I don't want to play any part in making it harder for them. And it seems like somehow that's happened on some occasions. And it's a shame. It's really a shame. But this poor man was looking for answers just as much as we were, only he had a reason to outside of our morbid curiosity and our brain saying, make this make sense, right? It was his daughter and his daughter that passed away. So he was going nuts, right? So apparently, because he didn't feel like he was getting any good information either. So let me find it. Here we go. Steve, okay. Not all of Steve's efforts had been in vain. He had assembled some blue chip sources, cops. He revealed to several friends, including an FBI agent in the St. Louis office, who shared his personal email so that his bosses in the bureau wouldn't learn that he was communicating with Steve. Okay, fine. I'm sorry. I don't know if it was Blum that did it. It was Steve that did this. Okay. And most helpful of all, a conduit to two of the grand jurors who had been on the panel that had voted to indict Bryan Kohberger. And in the process, he had compiled some startling revelations. Talking about Steve. Hard-won information that he triumphantly disclosed to his newfound internet associates. Oh, this is breaking my heart. See, I'm glad I wasn't involved in it. Okay. But if for whatever reason I would never tell someone that. But whoever he told, Brett Norton, apparently told Howard Blum this. And the reason he says, or at least the reason I believe he feels it's credible, is because there's a whole series of texts and stuff that was put on the internet that I watched. And who knows, she could have fabricated this. So this may not be true, okay? But if he's going to call it a credible source, this is what he says. Kohberger had purchased a dark blue Dickies long sleeve work uniform at Walmart not long before the murder, Steve had learned. The authorities had a copy of the $49.99 receipt to escape. I mean, honestly, if that's their evidence, he purchased a Dickies from Walmart. I saw that. If you guys saw that receipt, I'm pretty sure I saw it. It didn't say what it was. It just said $49.99. So that's kind of a stretch, unless they have the Dickies suit, which they don't. And they say apparently this Dickies suit was the reason why he doesn't have any injuries and didn't leave any blood. I'm sorry, but a Dickies suit is just like, it's just clothes like anything else. It's just kind of cool for workers to wear. You zip it up or whatever, but it's not like you put in a Dickies suit and you walk outside and you have on some kind of special armor where like a bullet or somebody's like nails or somebody punching you. It's not like that's going to protect you from that. If that were the case, we'd probably all be walking around in Dickies suits when we were worried, right? No, it's just a work uniform that a lot of people are like mechanics and stuff, right? So the Dickies suit, even if he bought a freaking Dickies suit, okay, which would be weird, but whatever, okay, even if he bought one, it doesn't explain why there's no blood in that place. It doesn't explain why there's no scratches on his face when people were fighting him back. It doesn't explain why he didn't have a come into class with like a big bruise on his face or any injury, even a limp, for God's sake. I mean, people, you're going to get some kind of swing at the bastard if he's coming in there doing it. Trust me, if it was me, it'd be worse than that, because he'd be met with a lot worse than just my fists, all right? But we won't get into that, okay? I'm just saying, though, right? Dickies suit, I don't know. It's not like it's kryptonite. You know what I'm saying? So there was no sign. They couldn't find the Dickies outfit, which, again, who cares, right? But Steve says if what he had learned was true from people who had spoken to members of the grand jury who had been prosecuted with the case, it centered on the alleged behavior of the two roommates who had miraculously survived the night unscathed. This is where that rumor comes from, where we hear about, the girls not only were awake and heard everything, they were texting each other back and forth. Okay. This started from Howard Blum's email, whatever they call it. It's a weird name for that magazine, airmail drop or whatever. That's where this started from. So he's upset by that, which I don't blame him, because if I heard that, I would need to know immediately, is that true? Because if it's true, we got big problems, ladies. We got big effing problems. If you were awake and texting back and forth when that shit went down, oh, you got some explaining to do. All right, that's just me personally. So I can imagine Steve probably felt the same way, right? So we need to know if that's true. And the trial, when's the trial going to be? It's not until June. Okay, so anyway, he was upset. So after he did some digging, he grew convinced he had the informant in his sights. He was preparing to reach out to this individual. So apparently he was able to get into some stuff through some of this grand jury people, spilling the beans. And he was able to figure out who this there was an informant that called in a tip to the FBI. This is the informant they're hiding. This informant, we all know there's an informant, right? He would explain that he was empowered by a father's natural right to understand fully the last moments of his daughter's life. It was his duty. I think it's a perfect argument. This was an argument he felt that no one could reject. At last, he would know the whole story of what had really happened to Kaylee and why. He had this informant in sight. But before he could make his move, before he could get in a room and have a heart-to-heart talk with the witness, guess who stopped by? Guess who reached out to him? The same person who reached out to the woman, Vargas, who testified about the DNA. The FBI. The FBI came over. So, yeah, the FBI stopped him in his tracks. And they sent him an official letter also to Shannon Gray, his attorney, warning if there were any attempts to contact that individual, Steve had been pursuing, there would be legal consequences. Well, at least for one thing, Steve would know at that point, he got the right person. He has the right person. So, if true, okay, then, there's an informant. There's an informant, and Steve knows who it is. Steve knows who it is. If you want to believe Howard Bloom's source, who I believe is Brett Norton, but I'm not positive. He also talks about how the family has on our Facebook page, which I haven't been on. I don't frequent that. I don't like Facebook, but it says hashtag justice for Kaylee, House Bill 186, shots fired. The Idaho State Legislature Bill 186 passed last March after Kohberger's indictment and affirmed that if the chemicals required for an IV execution weren't available, a death sentence would be filled by a firing squad. I'm sorry, but let's just take a step back for a second. All right. Even if you're for the death penalty, which I've said multiple times that I'm not. All right. But even if you are, what do you think about a firing squad? That's terrifying. Okay. Is the guillotine going to be next? Is that what we're going to bring back next? Because a firing squad, that seems very barbaric to me. All right. But here's the thing. I looked into why is it that these chemicals are in short supply? It makes zero sense, right? It makes zero sense that if they're going to put someone to death with some chemical, which, I mean, you could literally, I'm not going to tell you things you could do because I don't want to give away. I just know medically some of the things you can do, right? But let's just say these chemicals, they're in short supply. Oh, well, you know why they're in short supply? I found out, and I did a video on this too, but I'll just briefly mention it here. Because the people who manufacture, come on up, Winnie, come on. Wants to say hi. The people who manufacture, okay, those chemicals, the companies, they don't want you to know who they are. The cowards. They're cowards. They'll manufacture the shit to kill the person, but they don't want anybody to know who they are. Now, is that some BS or what? So Idaho, the state of Idaho, was going around in these back alleys getting these drugs like on the slide. Like they were going over state line, they were meeting people and basically like a drug deal for these things that are used on death row. That's what they were doing. And that's shady as hell. And that's all because the companies who make this don't want to be advertised as that. For example, and this is not who it is, but I'm just saying, let's say it was GlaxoSmithKline, or it was Pfizer, or I don't know, ABC Company. They make the stuff. That's not hard. The stuff that you need it's not like hard to come by, right? They make it, they package it all up, and what should happen in a world where people have integrity and they're going to use that for the death sentences, they then send it to the prison and there's a chain of custody, make sure it's kept properly. Nobody weird gets it to do weird things with it. But that's not what happened. These people don't even want their company name known that make these chemicals. That's some cowardice BS. And so that's the real reason why there's a shortage. It's not a shortage. It's, again, another euphemism that people like to use. There's not a shortage. It's that the people who make this stuff don't want you to know who they are. But, the same companies make things like fentanyl and OxyContin that have killed how many thousands of people? We know their name, right? We know their name. How's that any different? I don't know. But that's what I read. I read a lot about it, and that's why this bill came to pass with the firing squad, which I think is cruel and unusual punishment. I think the death penalty is also cruel and unusual punishment. We've all seen, I think there was a guy recently on Idaho death row, Creech, I think his name is. I forget his name, but they tried to put him to death and it didn't work. You shouldn't, that's not okay. You know what I mean? Imagine the fear. And I get it. The man is probably awful. He was convicted of some awful things. I'm not saying he needs to be free or anything, but no matter who you are, right? There's a humanity in all of us. I believe. I have to believe that, or, or it's over, right? So it's horrible to think that you're going to your like your death, and you're all set for it mentally. You've been worried about it for years. I mean, I don't know how people don't drop dead beforehand out of fright. You get there, you lay down, they do it, and it doesn't work. You're supposed to just wait for them to do it again. That's sick. That's sick. Think about it. It's a sick system. It's also a sick system. In my opinion, it's a sick system where the government has the control to do that to someone, to kill them. Because trust me, the government has political enemies, as we're seeing right now. And I won't get into politics, but if you're a political enemy of this country, it's not hard for the government to set you up. And if they want to put you to death, apparently they can do that with a firing squad in Idaho. So, I don't mess with that. I don't like it. I feel like there are spiritual debts that are going to be paid. And if you do awful shit in this lifetime, awful shit will come back to you in this lifetime or the next. You will get your just desserts, whether they're good or bad. So that's why I have a strong faith and belief in that. And that's why I don't believe in the death penalty. All right. Sorry. I'll get off my high horse now. One last thing though about it. One last thing. I used to always think, how they say people like, what do you want your last meal to be on death row? Which is just like really bizarre. Like you're going to kill this person, but you want to treat them really nice before they die. So like they can have whatever they want apparently before they die. And I even saw I think it was in a magazine or book where they showed like the last meals of like a bunch of different serial killers. And some of them were really weird, like peas and like peas and carrots and just a little mashed potato or something. I don't know. But one of them was like PB&J with the crust cut off. I mean, imagine. I mean, regardless, who wants to fucking eat when they're going to be put to death? Okay. Who wants to eat? All right. Like, why are they asking them? You could have whatever you want, anything you want, because we're going to kill you tomorrow. We're going to put you down tomorrow. So your last hurrah on this planet, like what you want to eat, what you want. No effing way. Like, I don't even know how people could decide that. So my point is, I think they should ask them to play a song. What song do you want to hear? I'd rather hear a song if that were the situation than have a last meal, because I wouldn't be able to eat. Are you kidding me? So anyway, so a song. And I was like, I don't know. I really like that song, Hey Jude, right? From the Beatles, but I don't know. Hopefully I never have to think about that. And neither do any of you. All right. So that's kind of all I wanted to get on here and talk about tonight. I've been reading this book here, Weird Scenes from the Canyon. And oh my Lord, there's a lot of really interesting stuff that happened in Laurel Canyon in the 1950s and 60s. The start of the whole 60s movement, the hippie movement. And I'm going to do a series on this because some of the stuff I found out in this book is just absolutely fascinating. And this guy is so incredible that wrote the book, David McGowan. He's since passed away, but he did a lot of research on this book. So, basically the byline for the book is Laurel Canyon, Covert Ops and the Dark Heart of the Hippie Dream. And when I get into some of this stuff, I started reading it because I started thinking about Idaho 4 and how, it's not, Ted Bundy was out there, right, at Washington State University. And then not much further up north in that area, there's a large population of intelligence officers, retired intelligence officers, intelligence workers, CIA, covert ops type people. There's a lot of them up in that area. And I just started I did one of my things is on this, like the PSYOPs and the ARGs and the Department of Defense, and just how certain events in our history can accelerate a certain culture, right? A certain culture. And, Manson was definitely one of them. The Manson murders were definitely one of them. And he brings it up in here. And it's just fascinating when you find out some of the relationships between these people, like the mamas and the papas and Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin and Phil Spector and who else? Frank Zappa, who I think is an excellent musician, but I have a little different opinion after reading some of this stuff. Yeah, it's really fascinating. And how, Charles Manson was, he played musical instruments on a lot of the background for these bands, a lot of the hits that people sing to. Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. I'll just say one thing that I learned so far from the book, and then we'll get into it more on my next show. But basically, Jim Morrison was the son of an admiral, a Navy officer, who also was in intelligence, and I think I said this last time, but he also happened to be the person who was manning the ship in the Gulf of Tonkin when that false flag occurred. That's Jim Morrison's father. Okay. And if that was just one of the rock stars or hippies, you could be like, oh, that's just an interesting side note. But there's so much more to it than that. So, Jim Morrison, when he became famous, when he, was in the canyon and developed the Doors, okay, who I loved as a kid. I mean, I loved all their albums, loved Jim Morrison. He was obviously already long dead by the time, I was around listening to his music, but apparently he was really well known as a poet, a very smart kid. And he looked a lot different a few months before he became Jim Morrison on the Sunset Strip. He came up with right away like 36 different songs that he composed for the Doors albums. The problem with that is he doesn't play any musical instruments. He, even during one interview when they asked him, he said, no, I don't play instruments and I don't have any desire to learn. So when you compose a song, it's not just the lyrics, right? It's not just the lyrics, it's the music. And in order to compose music, singer-songwriters play something, whether it's a piano or a guitar. All Jim Morrison had was a tambourine, which is what a lot of these people had. Okay. So he doesn't know how to read or write music, or apparently he does, because he composed 36 songs at least. I mean, for the Doors' first 3 albums, just out of the blue, he said it all came to him in one night. And that's where he got all of this, this basically download. And that's really weird. Okay. That's like super weird. And apparently, to see them live, the Doors live wasn't really that great. Even his singing wasn't even really that great, because the studio version of what was put on the albums, which we all love, sadly is really not them playing a lot of the time. It's this group called the Wrecking Crew, which was formed by Phil Spector. And we'll get into a little bit more of that, but it's unbelievable, the ties here. And it just makes me, I just feel like I started reading this book because I felt like there was something about it that reminded me of what's happening in Idaho, because I do think there's a cultural shift going on there, particularly because the Christ Church, Brian Wilson, and then also the ley lines in that area, the energy lines and stuff like that. So that's it for tonight, guys. Hopefully you followed along with me and don't think I'm too much of a kook. But if you do, that's okay too. I'm fine with being weird. It's a weird place we're in right now, so just got to roll with it, I guess. All right, let's put our guy up here, our mister here. Let's do it. And Anna Melodies is a follower of mine. If you should check out his channel. He does some really cool music on there with different animals. Some of them are really funny. Some of them are just peaceful and calming. Anna Melodies, ANIMELODIES. Yeah, he's check him out. Check him out, guys. But anyway, he mentioned under something, he thought it would be cool if I would do a meditation, like have a separate channel with meditation, because I always put this guy up and I do the deep breathing and stuff. So I thought that was pretty funny. It's actually kind of cool idea. All right, let's just everybody taking a deep breath here. We're going to sign out. I'm just going to take in a nice deep breath. Get yourself nice and still. Clear your mind. And if you can't make your thoughts stop, just observe the thoughts. Let them just fly away, float away like dust. Nice and easy, guys. Nice and slow. And exhale all of that toxic energy you might have built up over the day dealing with anybody or anything. Breathe in the beautiful, beautiful, clean, fresh energy that fills and feeds your soul. Nice and slow. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being here. Hopefully this made sense. And I'll catch you on the next one. Also, shout out to 12 Gauge. You guys should give him a follow as well. 12GAGE. 12 Gauge. I've been on his show a couple times, and he's got some good stuff over there.